Hello, I'm going to continue reading from The Silver Crown by Robert O'Brien today. We've got through 10 chapters. We're on chapter 11 now, which is called Otto the Knife. We'll probably do a couple of chapters because they're not very long. So get yourself settled, all nice and comfortable, and I shall begin. They make you look like a boy, Otto said. He was not paying a compliment, but just making an observation. What does? Ellen said. The trousers and the shirt. Girls wear jeans all the time. You're old-fashioned. That's not what I meant. I meant in case somebody was watching. Watching what? Watching us. When we left the house, they were looking for a girl. If they thought you were a boy, they'll give up. That's true, Ellen said. I hadn't thought of that. Except your hair looks like a girl's hair. You should wear a hat. I don't have a hat. I know. They were walking steadily along the two tracks of the road. Ellen on the left, Otto on the right. They had come perhaps 2 miles since leaving Mrs. Fitzpatrick. The morning was still cool, birds sang over their heads, and their spirits were high. Here the road led through oak trees, choosing its way carefully where the great trunks were far enough apart for it to pass. It was taking them slowly upwards towards a pass between 2 high mountains, so that on either side the ground and the forest sloped above them as far as they could see. A small brook had picked almost the same path, bubbling along parallel to the road, sometimes leaving it for a while, sometimes flowing right across it, so that they had to leap the water or pick their way carefully on mossy green stepping stones. We could cut it off, Otto said thoughtfully. Cut what off? Your hair. We don't have any scissors. I could do it with my knife. He pulled the knife from its sheath, as if he planned to start there and then. The idea of Otto's hacking at her hair with a knife did not appeal to Ellen at all. You could not, she said, a bit tartly. Anyway, we're already out of sight, so it's too late. You don't need to get snotty about it. I'm not. And don't say snotty. Why not? It's a vulgar word. When Otto faced a dead end, he changed course. See that spot, he said. He pointed with his knife at a circular scar on a tree trunk, about 15 feet ahead, where a limb had fallen off. Yes, the round one. Otto drew his arm back. The knife blade flashed through the sunlight, and the point buried itself deep in the very middle of the round spot, like an arrow in a bull's-eye. He did this so quickly Ellen's eye could hardly follow it. How did you do that? She asked in astonishment. It's easy, Otto said. I can do it every time. He ran to the tree and pulled the blade out. See that skinny tree over there? He pointed to a sapling, perhaps 2 inches in diameter. Again, his arm moved in an incredibly deft motion, and the blade was in the sapling, humming softly. Let me try, Ellen said. You won't be able to. It takes practice. He was right. When Ellen threw the knife, it struck handle to and clattered uselessly to the ground. She tried again, with the same result. She gave it back to Otto. Do it slower, she said, so I can see how. I can't. When I do it slower, I can't do it. How did you learn? I read in a book about a Chinese murderer who killed people by throwing knives at them. It was neat. No bang or anything. The people just fell down dead, and the Chinaman always got away before anybody knew what happened. His fingerprints would be on the knife. He wore gloves. Anyway, I drew a picture of a Chinaman on a plank and tried throwing a pocket knife at it. Pocket knives are no good, though. The handle's too heavy. But how could the Chinaman in the story get his knife back? He didn't. He just left it in their hearts and got another one. He had boxes of them. Then I practiced with an ice pick. That worked better, only it was too light. It wouldn't go very far. Then I got this knife. I practiced for months, almost every day. It's sort of dangerous. No, it's not. I mean, I'm not going to throw it at anybody. You'd hurt them if you did. Hurt them? Otto said scornfully. They'd drop dead. They kept walking as they talked, and in another mile or so, the trail levelled off. They had reached the top of the first pass, but ahead they could see much higher mountains rising, some with rocky shoulders too steep for trees to grow on. From where they stood, they could not see how or where the road crossed these, but it was leading straight towards them, so it was clear that they had to climb ahead. Still, if wagons had made it, so could they. Richard stayed with them, sometimes riding on Otto's shoulder, sometimes flashing from branch to branch above them like a blue-black shadow. Every now and then he vanished entirely for 3 or 4 minutes, flying a scouting expedition, ahead or back off through the woods to one side. When he returned to Otto's shoulder after one of these, he always squawked quietly as if to say, "I'm back." Along the way, Ellen found a blackberry bush growing beside the road and lagged behind Otto for a few seconds to pick a handful of berries. As she set out again, she felt a rustle of wind on her cheek, heard a small voice say, "Eat," and Richard, back from a mission, had settled on her shoulder. She held out a berry, and the black bill tweaked it gently from between her thumb and finger. She called to Otto in delight, "Look at Richard!" Otto obviously felt quite proud of Richard. "He likes you," he said. "That's the first time he's ever sat on anybody's shoulder besides mine." As for Richard, he was interested primarily in the blackberries. He gripped Ellen's shoulder gently, his talons ticking slightly, his soft wing feathers brushing her cheek, until he had eaten all the berries she had. Then he flew back to the bush to pick some more of his own. But from then on, he was as likely to settle on Ellen's shoulder as on Otto's. She got used to feeling the puff of air and the sudden light weight. The sun rose higher and beamed through the trees with steady intensity. Even in the mountains it grows hot at midday in summer. Ellen took off her sweater. She found herself seeking out the shady side of the road, where there was a shady side, and felt her blouse grow wet with sweat under the rucksack. Small clouds of gnats hummed around their heads and got in their hair, ears, eyes, and noses. With Otto's knife they cut switches of leaves to fan them away, which helped a little bit, but not much. Then the level stretch of road ended. Just ahead it began rising steeply, and the oak forest became mixed with pine. Off the road to the left, the brook ran through a shady grove. "It's lunchtime," Otto decreed. "How can you tell?" Ellen said. Not that she disagreed, but neither of them had a watch. "The sun's straight up, so it must be noon. Anyway, my belly knows." He patted his stomach. "That's a vulgar word, too," Ellen said. They walked over to the brook, unloaded their rucksacks gratefully, and sat down. Their legs were tired, and Ellen rubbed her ankle, which, strangely, had not hurt at all while she was walking on it, but started to now, though only a little bit. They selected food from their stores: biscuits and raspberry jam, and a couple of hard-boiled eggs, sprinkled with salt. They drank fresh cold water from the brook, remembering to refill the water bottle. Since they had hiked hard all morning, everything tasted delicious. After lunch they lay on their backs and looked at the sky through the trees. "What's your Aunt Sarah like?" asked Otto. "Old or young?" "Young. She's not even married yet." "That doesn't prove she's young. She might be an old maid." "She is not," Ellen said. "She'll get married when she gets older." "Who to?" "How do I know? But I know she will. She's pretty. She's beautiful." "Is she rich?" "I don't know. I think she is. She has a big house and 2 maids and a gardener." "When I grow up, I'm going to have millions of dollars. Then I'll build a big shop, an enormous shop, right near my mother's house. It'll have everything in it: foods, clothes, dogs, guns, firewood, cars, beds, and coats." "A department store," Ellen said. "But they don't have cars in department stores." "This one will, and everybody who buys anything will have to pay, so I'll make even more money, except my mother. When she wants anything, she can just walk over to the shop and pick it out. When they try to make her pay, she'll have a special card that says she can have it for free." "Like a credit card," Ellen said. "What's a credit card?" "It's like what you said. You go to the shop and buy something, and when it's time to pay, you give them a card with your name on it and say, 'Charge it,' but they'll send you a bill later, so you do have to pay anyway." "They won't send my mother any bill. I'll tell them not to. It's my shop." "I wish I had a card like that," Ellen said, thinking of all the big shops she had been in and all the things in them. "Okay, you can have one too, and I'll have one, but nobody else. Otherwise I'll lose money." "Thank you," Ellen said. It did sound like a nice idea, but she remembered what Mrs. Fitzpatrick had told her about Otto. Still, it was a generous sort of dream. They repacked their things, shouldered their rucksacks, and went on. They were refreshed by the lunch and the short rest. Even so, they set out at a considerably slower pace than they had in the morning. The trip no longer seemed so much like a picnic, but rather more like a forced march. Even Richard was less inclined to swoop about. He was content to ride, looking rather drowsy, on one or the other of their shoulders. As the road rose higher and the oak trees disappeared behind them, and they walked through a deep, dark green pine forest. This was a stiller kind of wood, with fewer birds. The pine needles muffled the sound of their footsteps, and they walked in silence. The road turned rocky underfoot, and more frequently they saw great grey stone outcroppings and steep rock cliffs where nothing grew at all. At length they came to a place where a huge pine tree, uprooted by the wind, had fallen across the road. Although it had long been dead, its spiny branches formed an impenetrable barrier, and they had to detour round it. Otto said, "That proves nobody goes over this road any more. They would have cut the tree away." And yet, a minute later, curiously, he found he was wrong, for when they walked into the woods to go around the tree, they could see there was a definite path already there. "Maybe animals made it," Ellen said. "It might be a deer track." But Otto, who knew quite a lot about tracks, found, in a place where the pine needles had been scuffed away, a curved indentation. "That's from a man's shoe," he said. "A heel mark. I know it is." And Ellen, when she looked closely, could see that it did look like one. A little further along the path, Otto found another bare spot, where there were several more of the tracks, all the same size, as if they were made by the same shoes, some curving in one direction, some in the opposite. "Somebody walks back and forth through here," Otto said, "but not very often, or there'd be more tracks. You can hardly see some of them. They're old." And this was puzzling, because since leaving Mrs. Fitzpatrick early that morning, they had seen no sign of a house nor any human being. Now the road changed again, and to Ellen's mind at least, changed much for the worse. Where it had been following a high valley, so that the ground rose on either side, it now deserted the valley and clung directly to the mountain side, following a natural ledge or shelf cut out of a very steep, very high slope. In fact, in places, it was not a slope at all. A rock cliff rose sheer as a wall on their left and fell straight down on their right. It was the straight down that Ellen did not like. It made her dizzy to think about it, much less to look down it, and she walked as close to the left side of the road as she could, picking her way carefully so she would not stumble, since the road was narrow here, and there were loose rocks lying all over it. Otto was not bothered in the least. He strode fearlessly along the edge, and occasionally, when the drop-off was particularly steep, picked up a large stone and tossed it over the edge. Then they would listen, and sometimes it seemed as if a whole minute went by before they heard the clunk as the stone crashed on the other stones far below. Ellen did not much like this game, but what really worried her was this. If the road continued this way until dark, they would have to stop walking for fear of stepping over the ledge, and then where would they sleep? The ground underfoot was nothing but hard, sharp rocks, and anyway, who could sleep when just turning over might send you flying down a cliff? So she watched uneasily while the sun turned from white to orange and then red as it sank in the evening sky, and as the great shadows of the mountains crept like black clouds over the forest in the valley below. She walked grimly on, and made Otto keep walking too, although both their legs were tired now, and their feet felt like cement blocks. At last, as they came around a curve in the mountainside, Ellen thought she saw, far ahead, a glimmer of green near the road. Another half-mile, and she was sure of it. They were coming to the top of this particular shoulder of the mountain. The steep slope flattened out, and there was forest again. They staggered the last few 100 yards in silence, turned without a word off the rocky road into the pines, and fell exhausted onto the brown carpet of needles. But after a few minutes of resting, Otto's energy began to return. He propped his head on one fist. "I wonder how far we've walked," he said. "How can you tell?" Ellen said without moving. "There's no way to measure how far you walk." "Yes, there is. You measure how fast you walk, how many miles an hour, and then you figure out how long you've been walking, and then multiply." "Sure, if you know, but we don't know how fast we walked, or how long either." "I bet we walked 50 miles. "Not that far," Ellen said. "Soldiers can only march 30 miles a day, even when they train every day. I read it in a book." "We've got to make a fire," Otto said. "Yes," Ellen said, "in a few minutes." "But not here." "Why not?" "You can see it from the road. I mean, in case somebody's following us. We've got to move further back into the woods." So they rested a little longer, and then walked another quarter-mile or so to a spot where, in the thick forest, their fire would be invisible. There was plenty of firewood lying about, for the pines around had shed their lower branches. Otto scraped away all the pine needles from a wide circle. Pine needles burned fiercely and could set the woods afire. Then, using a handful of them as tinder, he got a blaze going, using only a single match to start it. They put some of the dried beef in their cooking pot, added some potatoes, which Ellen peeled and sliced up with Otto's knife, and some water, and in a few minutes the clearing was filled with the warm smell of beef stew. They decided to ration their water this way, 1/3 for cooking, 1/3 for drinking, and 1/3 for tomorrow, since they could not be sure when they would come to another brook. They ate the stew, all of it, even though they had cooked all the pot would hold, and sopped up the gravy with more biscuits. They had not enough water to wash the pot, but Ellen wiped it dry with a clump of green pine needles. Then they fixed their beds. Otto showing Ellen how to roll up in her blanket, first piling pine needles under one end of it to serve as a pillow. When darkness came, they slept. Ellen woke up once during the night. She heard someone moving, but it was only Otto, putting some more wood on the fire. Richard slept high in a pine tree. That's the end of chapter 11. So I think I might finish there actually and do another chapter separately. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're sleeping, perhaps you nodded off. Anyway, bye for now. See you next time. Lots of love.